Dum dum dum, Daniela, thank you so much for being here. Hey everyone, we're joined by Daniela, who will be talking to us about open source development. How are you doing today?
Hi everyone, it's so good to be here. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, you said you were like really deep diving into like the whole topic and stuff. So I'm like very excited to see what you come up with. At Bold Fun, we promote building in public very often, and I'm very excited to see what you have to present here because for us, it's one thing to open source your code and stuff, but you kind of need to tell a story. You kind of need to keep people engaged and stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what you have. I was gonna do a whole intro little section here, but you're so prepared. So how about we just jump into it straight away? I'm gonna
Cool,
give you
of
the
course.
stage, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah,
All
let's
right,
do it.
let's go. Stage is yours, Daniela.
Cool, thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Daniela, as you know already. I'm a Rust developer. I've been working on Bitcoin since 2019. And right now I work on the Bitcoin Dev Kit project as a maintainer, and I have a grant from Spiral to do so. I'm the co-founder of HackBS. We'll talk a bit more about it later, but in short, it's a cypherpunk hackerspace located in Italy. So just a place where people can meet and work together. And also, I'm the vice president of the Bitcoin Dev Kit Foundation. We'll also talk about that later. I want to start with just defining what is the free open source software. And the best definition I could find is that it's software that is distributed with its source code, making it available for use, modification, and distribution. Well, actually, it depends if it's available or not for use, modification, and distribution. Because it's really difficult to find a definition for open source software because projects are very different one from another, like very different. First of all, it's important to note that when we say free open source software, we mean free as in free speech, not as in free beer. This means that when we say free, we mean freedom. And so you have the freedom to at least look at the code and maybe in some cases modify it and distribute it. But it doesn't mean that the code itself is just free in the sense that you don't need to pay for it. There is some open source software, maybe not in Bitcoin, but that you need to pay for. And when you pay for it, you get the software and the source code, and you can at least look at it. As I said, projects can be very different one from another. And so there's this license kind of thing. So every project, at least every big project, is licensed, and there are different types of licenses, and some are more permissive than others. So there's, for example, the MIT license, which is super permissive. You see some code license with MIT, you can use it, you can modify it. Maybe you don't even, I don't remember exactly, but if I recall correctly, you don't even need to say from where you took that code. Where there are other licenses that are much less permissive, maybe you can take a piece of code and modify it, but you need to cite the author. There are some licenses that tell you, you want to use this piece of code, cool, you can, but you also need to open source your own code. So, projects are very different. And for this exact reason, finding a definition for open source is just so tough. And then I just want to highlight that even in terms of patterns, not all the projects look the same. So every project has their own way of doing things. And every time you start contributing to a new project, you need to get a bit accustomed to what the maintainers and the other contributors are used to. As I said, very difficult to define open source code, but I found this really cool metaphor, which is the cathedral and the bazaar metaphor. It's actually an essay by S. Raymond, and it's on methods for creating software. So we can think about traditional development like a cathedral. So there's a small group of devs or a single organization that control how the code is built. The roles are really clear. There's people that design the code, people that implement the code, people that manage other people, but everyone has a really clear job. And the source code might be accessible, but if that's so, if it's accessible only once the product is released. So while the devs are building the product, the code is all closed source. Then there's this open source model we're more used to, which is more like a bazaar. Um, why the bazaar? Because it's decentralized, it's open. There's a lot of people collaborating one with each other. It's a bit more chaotic. Everyone has their own background. Everyone can contribute something, and the roles are not really clear. The development is transparent. It means that from when the project starts, it's open source and people can help out even before the code is ready. The say states that the bazaar model is superior, and I'm also convinced of that because you develop a bit faster and the software you get is higher quality. There's this sentence that I really like: given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. So if enough people look at the code, we can fix and find every possible bug. And also, the bazaar model creates really robust communities in the sense that instead of having a community of users that just use the code, the users can become devs and help out the software to grow, and that's really, really cool. So in Bitcoin, most of the software uses the bazaar model. We do have some software using the cathedral model, but I'd say most of it uses the bazaar model, and this is, at least for us right now, a bit more interesting. So every time I'm going to talk about open source, I'm going to talk about bazaar model style kind of software. And this doesn't mean that the cathedral style software isn't open source, because if you recall our definition of open source, it just means that the code is out there to be seen. In some cases also modified, in some cases you can see it only if you buy the software. But cathedral doesn't mean closed source, but it's a different way of doing open source, and we usually don't do that in Bitcoin. So let's look at some common patterns that we might find in a bazaar model kind of project. Users are treated as co-developers. So since users have access to the code, they are encouraged to at least file bug reports when they find it, but then they might just start contributing, improving the documentation, trying to fix their own bugs, add features, etc. Releases should be early in the sense that the code should be open sourced as soon as possible. Maybe not like in the first moment. It makes sense to project to just stay closed source in the sense that maybe they're on someone's laptop for like the first week of work. That makes sense, but just release the code as soon as possible so that people can start contributing. One thing that is done in many bazaar model softwares, but not really in Bitcoin, is frequent integration and several versions. So if you think about Rust, Debian, NixOS, those are the first examples that come to my mind. There are usually two versions of the software: the stable and the nightly. So the stable is stable. You have fewer features, but all of them are tested and less buggy. But then you have the nightly version that includes all the latest features, but it's way less tested. This is fine if you think about, the Rust toolchain. It's okay. You can use Rust nightly, and you might get some bugs when compiling code. That's just okay. If you do, you just tell the devs, or the code might not be super optimized, etc. That's fine when you use Debian or some operating system. In Bitcoin, we don't do that because we want our software to be thoroughly tested before people can use it. It happens that code is released and we say, hey, don't use this in production. This is still very, very early. But still, when when you think about, for example, Bitcoin Core, there's no Bitcoin Core Nightly which has new features because we're really scared of just having bugs on our nodes. So we usually just use this stable versioning. I just wanted to briefly touch on the process of open source development, at least in Bitcoin. Most of you, I guess, are already familiar with it, but I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. So we start by creating issues. Either developers or users create issues. They might report bugs, ask some clarification on documentation, ask for some features. Then from a list of issues, devs decide what to work on. And when they're done working, they open a pull request. And a pull request on GitHub basically means, hey, this is my code. Is it good enough to be included to the master branch? Do you like it enough? Do you like the idea behind it? Do you like the way I implement it? Can this be merged to master? Maintainers and contributors review DPRs. This is important. Also contributors review DPRs, not only the maintainers. They comment the code, they highlight problems and possible bugs that might be there, and they publish a verdict. What is a verdict? Well, there are various possible outcomes of a review. This is mostly used in Bitcoin and on the Linux kernel. Most projects outside Bitcoin, as far as I know, they don't really use this idea of publishing like a verdict or outcome of your review, but I actually really like it. So these are the possible outcomes: the concept arc, tested or untested arc, concept NAC or NAC. So the mean of concept arc is, I like this idea, but the implementation could be improved. While the idea of concept NAC is just, I don't like this idea, I don't want to see merge, I don't even care about the implementation, I don't like this. Then there's the tested and untested arc. Arc means I like the idea and how it's implemented. Tested arc or simply arc means I also tested the code and I trust it. Untested arc means I didn't test the code. I don't know if it's working well or not. I just read the implementation. And then finally, there's the NAC, which is I don't like how this is implemented. It might be a good direction. Like we might want to go in this direction, but not implementing in this way. Notice that usually, because both concept arc and NAC means you do kind of like the direction. And so usually if the implementation is slightly different from what you'd like, you just say concept arc, I like the idea, let's revise the implementation. But if the implementation is completely wrong, you just say NAC, I'm sorry. There are various rounds of reviews in the sense that you do when you write code, you publish it, and contributors just comment on it. You fix all the comments and you say, okay, I fixed all the problems you found. Thank you. Review again, please. And this can go for various rounds. It depends on the size of the project and the size of the PR, obviously, but it can go on for a while. And when the PR has enough acts, maintainers might decide to merge it to master. How many acts are needed, that depends on the project and depends on what the maintainer thinks mostly. Let's also briefly look at the roles. I know you know this already. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We have three types of people. We have users, contributors, and maintainers. Users are the vast majority of the people involved with the project, and they're usually silent, but they're really encouraged to participate. Contributors, that's really difficult to define. GitHub, for example, it calls contributors people who have at least one commit on a certain repository. To me, that's not really fair, because there are some contributions that are not about code, but are really important. So, for example, a person just working all day on classifying issues and closing PRs, etc., and not doing any code, that's a really valuable contributor to the project. So finding a good definition is really hard. But yeah, the idea is just people who help the project grow in a sense. And then you have maintainers, which is people that have the right access to the repository. So they decide if PRs can get merged or not, and so if features can get merged or not. It's important to note that sometimes some PRs are just really controversial, and in that case the maintainer has the last word. That happens all the time. That's tough. It puts maintainers in a weird position because they are really responsible for what's going on in the project. Sometimes that happens, and that's part of the job. I wanted to just spend some time looking at my own story because, well, first of all, I hope it can inspire someone, and second of all, maybe it can just give you a few ideas on how to start contributing. So, as I said, I started working on Bitcoin in 2019 when I joined Blockstream. I was working on Green Wallet, which is open source, and Blockstream AMP, which is this project from Blockstream, which is still closed source. In 2020, I joined Brains. I worked on Brains OS and Stratum v2, and both of these projects are open source. Then I joined Wizard Sardine in 2021. I was working on Revolt, which is still open source, and then I finally in the end, I got a grant to work full time on BDK in 2022. I realized when I got the grant, and even just a bit before when I started contributing to open source, I realized that working on an open source project for a company is very, very different from just contributing by yourself to open source. This is because companies have a more definite structure because you have a manager, the manager tells you what to do, it checks on you. If you have any problem, you know that you can ask your manager, and your manager might tell you, oh no, ask this other person. Well, open source is way more chaotic. People are not paid for helping you. No one is checking on you. No one is telling you what to do. And initially, it's really difficult to find what to work on. And sometimes you don't even have an idea on where to ask for help. Usually you're supposed to ask for help on Discord, but some people don't know that. And so it's way more difficult working in open source because of the chaotic structure. And obviously with time you get used to it. You start knowing who are the people you should ask to, etc., etc. But at first it's really, really tough. So I started contributing to FOSS, hoping to expand my public curriculum. I did some small contribution in 2020 to various projects, and then I did a kind of big first contribution to BDK. It was the coin selection module. It was the implementation of the branch and bound algorithm. Reading the code was already quite difficult. I wasn't good with Rust at all. I was just starting out, but I also found that it was difficult just interacting with strangers online, communicating with them, getting reviews and understanding what they mean and replying, etc. That was also really difficult. After the coin selection module, I didn't contribute to open source for a while. I didn't have much time because I was working a full-time job in Brains. I felt really overwhelmed, both while working in Brains and also while looking at open source. I felt that there was so much I didn't know. I didn't even know where to start. I didn't think I could be helpful, and it was so difficult just communicating with other contributors because I was, first of all, a bit shy. I didn't want to expose myself too much, and also just English was a bit of a problem. Not being a native English speaker, I was just so scared. Oh my gosh, I'm going to put a comment and I don't know, there's going to be a small grammatical mistake in my comment and everyone's going to think I'm not good at this, or I don't know. I was just too shy, too nervous, too afraid to really communicate effectively with others. So I just took a step back. I realized I wasn't ready. And yeah, I'm really proud I did this because it was the right call. It wasn't the right moment for me, and it's better to focus on learning the basics of coding, of communicating, before trying to tackle something that was definitely too big for me at the moment. So with time, I improved my technical skills and gained confidence. Gaining confidence that changed so much. So when I joined Wizard Sardine, I started working on the Revolt protocol, and the company itself started encouraging me to work on other open source projects, even in my work hours. They told me, hey, please just don't overdo it. Obviously, your main goal is still to contribute to Revolt. But if you start contributing to some other project, that means reputation, for you, Daniela, and reputation for Daniela means reputation for the company. And so they just told me, if there's any open source project you want to work on, you can do it in your work hours, just not most of the time, obviously. In the same year, I followed the Chain Code Lab seminary. It was, I think 5 weeks long seminary on how Bitcoin, like on chain, works. I later joined the Lightning seminar as well. I deepened my understanding of Bitcoin, but more importantly, I met a lot of people who were encouraging and supporting, and they were in my own position. They also wanted to contribute to open source. And so I met many people, many friends. Many of them, they have a career in open source right now, and it's just so cool that we got to meet while learning Bitcoin, and then each one of us has found their own way to contribute to Bitcoin. And so in that year, I started to contribute to various Bitcoin projects, such as Rust Bitcoin, Rust Manuscript, Bitcoin Dev Kit again. And then I did a small contribution to Bitcoin Core. Maybe I'll talk about that later. When the BDK contributors told me that they needed someone to work full-time on BDK, I happily joined the team, got a grant from Spiral. And I've been working mainly on Bitcoin Dev Kit ever since. I still contribute to other projects occasionally, but I realized that it's really important to focus on one project than trying to do everything. So I'm naturally very curious, and I would just like to do everything at once. I want to learn about Lightning, about this, about that, but the truth is my energy, my time is limited, and so for the time being, I'm focusing on BDK because that's what I want to work on right now. I quickly realized that being a grantee is very different from being an employee. It's really cool. It's cool to have freedom to decide what to work on, when, in which hours to work. That's so cool. But I mean, there are some struggles. So self-managing isn't easy. Just being able to tell yourself, to just not work, like to tell yourself that you should work enough hours to make sure that you're working on the right project that aligns with your values, and staying motivated is really, really important, because the second you're not motivated enough, then it's so tough to just work. And I'm saying this because when I first got a grant, I thought, okay, this is going to be perfect. I'm not going to have any issue. It's going to be fantastic. I can work whenever I want, etc. And that's true, of course. And I still prefer working as a grant, but there are some skills that I had to learn. And yeah, I think it's just important to notice that it's not as easy as it seems, and there are some skills that you need to learn along the way. In May 2023, I co-founded HackBS. It's a physical space, like a kind of shop located in Italy. In the day, it's a co-working space, and we have also a small Bitcoin shop in there. And then we do events, workshops, and talks, and we just hang out sometimes in the night. And the intention is to bring people together to work on cool projects. And I'm saying people and not devs, because I really want this hackerspace to be, cypherpunk focus. So we want to work on Bitcoin, on privacy-related projects, etc. But we don't want this to be exclusively for devs. We want to encourage non-technical or not so technical people to participate. In July 2023, the BDK Foundation was born, and I'm the vice president. The BDK Foundation has the intention to better managing the funds that are devoted to the BDK project. Because, you have two ways of funding an open source project. You might just have companies funding specific devs, or you might have a foundation just receiving donation from various companies and then deciding where those funds go. Obviously, it's a bit more centralizing to have the BDK Foundation, but if you want to work in BDK, but for some reason the BDK Foundation doesn't like you enough, you can still ask for a grant from other companies. So that's not really a problem. I see this as really making life easier for BDK devs. because we can just all get grants from the foundation and all work together. And also smaller entities that want to donate to BDK but don't have enough money to support one dev full time for a year, they can just donate a little money to the foundation, and then the foundation will find a way to spend this money on, just collecting money from various people and then devolving those to devs. So that's really cool, I think. I wanted to give a few tips on how to get started, but also tips that might be helpful if you've been working on open source for a while, especially as a grantee. First of all, you need to find the right project. And this means a project that interests you. One really good way of starting out is just starting contributing to projects that you already use and know. So if you're already a user of Bitcoin Core and you already know how Bitcoin Core works, then it might be a good idea to work on Bitcoin Core or other wallets, for example. But also find a project where your contributions can be valuable. So assess your skills. You should know what you're good at. Don't work on a project just because of the reputation of that the project has and that it could give you. So one example of this is I tried to contribute to Bitcoin Core a few years ago, and I did, I think, one PR, and I realized that it just wasn't for me because I'm not that good at C++. I'm not that good at Python. So, I mean, yeah, of course, working on Bitcoin Core, being able to say I work on Bitcoin Core full time, it's really cool. But you should make sure that, first of all, it interests you, and second of all, that you're valuable to the project. And also, if you're really new to this contributing to open source kind of thing, try to find a project that's used to onboarding new people, simply because onboarding people is not easy. And so, projects like Bitcoin Core maintainers are used to newcomers just opening a PR. And so they might be, a bit more kind, or just being wanted to explain things a bit more for a bit more time. They're just used to that. While if you contribute to a project that usually has, like, I don't know, 3 contributors and they're all senior devs, etc., they might not really know how to handle a new contributor. Respect the time of others. As I said, very time consuming to onboard new contributors to a project. So be mindful that every time someone replies to your questions or reviews your code, they're using some of their time and they're giving it to you. And I don't want to discourage anyone. I just want you to be aware that onboarding people is really, really tough for a maintainer, and or a contributor. It takes a lot of time. So be respectful, humble, and be grateful that someone is giving you their time. And also do your own research before asking. It happens so often that people they don't do enough research and they just ask the most trivial questions. That's really, I mean, you could use other people's time in a better way. So try to do your own research before asking, and just be really respectful that the other person is actually there helping you if they're replying or reviewing your code. Stay outside the comfort zone, but not too much. That's a really tough skill to get, but you need to recognize which issues are really, really easy to work on and which issues are really complicated, and you want to stay in between. So if you remain stuck on solving really easy issues, such as you fix the CI every time it breaks, good, congrats, but you're not really growing, you're not learning much. On the other hand, if you work on really difficult stuff that's way too difficult for you, you won't get anything done, and you'll get really anxious and probably at a certain time just get bored of it. So even though it's difficult, train yourself to find the right level of complexity. When you're done with working on something, ask yourself, was this too difficult for me? Was this fine? How am I doing? It gets easier with experience. Value communities. Try to have relationships with the people you work with. I know we love to think about developers as people working in their own room. The room is dark and they're by themselves with a hoodie and just working on their laptop. It's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that. Try to make friends that work on the same project as you do. Follow online courses and presentations such as this one. Go to conferences, but also when you're at conferences, don't spend the whole time talking about work. Try to also have a relationship with other people. Try to ask them about their life. Why not? You get closer, and it's just really cool to work with people that you know personally. Stay motivated is really, really important. If you're not motivated, you'll eventually just stop working. And so feeling part of a community helps a lot. Being able to chat with people about what's going on. If you have any problem, if you don't feel motivated, being able to just tell someone, hey, help, I'm not feeling good, do you have any tips? That really helps a lot. And also words of appreciation helps, and of course that's outside of your control, but I'm just saying, if you really appreciate someone for their work, just tell them. It happened to me sometimes, just people showing up at conference and be like, hey, you're Daniela, I really like what you do. And that's just so heartwarming, and that's great, really. So if you appreciate someone else's work, just tell them, and eventually I'm sure someone will tell the same to you, and that's a really, really nice feeling. It's not just about coding. I know this is maybe tough to hear, but even if you're a dev, it's not like 100% of your job is coding. So right now, in this exact moment, I'm working while giving this presentation, because part of my job is inspiring other people to contribute and giving presentation about my work and just advertising my work. And part of my job is also advertising myself, Daniela, as a developer, simply because if I want to get funded, then companies need to know me. I'm working when I mentor people or I'm being mentored, and I'm working when I review code. So spend more time, and that's like a tip in general, spend more time reviewing code than writing code, because reviewers are really scarce. Most people just want to write code, and I understand that, but reviewing is also really, really important. And so try to spend some time also reviewing other people's code. And also, this is maybe a bit controversial, but in a sense, I'm also working when I'm having a beer with contributors at a conference talking about life. As I said before, communities are really, really important. And so if you go to a conference, spend the weekend just hanging out with people, don't, maybe you won't even, you spend 0% of your time talking about what you do, but you just hang out, talk about life, talk about what's going on, talk about other projects. That's also work. So I think it's important to track, in a sense, how much time you're spending working. So for example, I use like a software, say, okay, I started working at this hour, finished at this other hour. And it's really important to also to consider everything you do as a part of your job as time spent working, not just coding. So at the end of the month, if you realize, for example, for me, October, I didn't write much code. Why? Because I spent time doing other things. And it doesn't mean I didn't work in October. It just means I spent time doing other part of my job. And that's completely fine. Maybe in November I'll write so much code. I don't know. I'm just saying it's not just about code. And lastly, try to avoid burnouts. I saw so many people just burning out after a while. Try to not forget that you're a human. You should do something in your life other than working, cultivate your hobbies, take the weekends off. I know that for many people, working itself is a hobby, but if you spend, just months and months working every day, every single day, full time, maybe 8 hours, 10 hours a day, eventually you will burn out, and obviously that's bad. So try to strive for consistency instead of maximize productivity. That's this example I put, that's really, really obvious. You can work 10 hours a day every day for 1 month, burn out, never come back, or work 4 hours a day only on weekdays, so weekends are free for 10 years, and be happy and balanced human. So which approach do you think in the long term gives more result? I'm pretty convinced it's the second approach. And so, yeah, please really take care of yourself. I saw too many contributors not doing that, and I think it's really, really important. And lastly, don't forget to have fun. Thank you. Oh no, there's
There's
no one.
no one just.
Okay.
Hey, don't forget to have fun. That is an important message. That is very important. Wow, thank you so much for giving us all that background. It's
Thank you.
amazing. I didn't know there was a BDK Foundation as well. That's
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
that's new.
yeah. What's the like the plans with that going forward? Like, is it
Yeah,
open sats or?
yeah, we got Spiral, and I also think OpenSAT's just sponsoring us, so that's really really cool. Most of the devs working on BDK will just switch from being Spiral devs to being the BDK Foundation grantees. That being said, there are still some contributors that are going to be funded by external entities, and as I said, of course, it's a bit centralizing, but it also makes life so much easier. And if you think about it, um, it's if you don't do something like this, it's really difficult for companies that don't have enough liquidity to just pay one dev for a year to
Mhm,
give back to the project. So in this way, a company can just say, okay, I don't have much money and give you 10K. That's
mhm.
it. And that's so cool. And the foundation can also, just organize bounties, maybe give part-time stipends, etc. So yeah, no, I'm really excited. I'm doing a lot of paperwork. I've been doing a lot of paperwork recently, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, is it European based?
No, no, I think Tennessee. Not
That's
sure.
true.
In the US for sure.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine the amount of paperwork. We were trying to do something in the Bitcoin design community along those lines as well. A Bitcoin design fund, basically.
Ooh.
Um, but yeah, amazing. Wow. Yeah, one of the things that like I wanted to highlight there is like like being respectful of people's time and stuff. And not just for the reason of like like common courtesy, right? It's it's also kind of like important. It's like in the sense of you like you want to be part of a project and like really like make that decision and like because people are going to be super excited for you to contribute um you know so they'll be really helpful. And if you're kind of like, oh well, I really want to do this and da, 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 and then you just jump on and they get excited too, and then you just like disappear on them, it kind of feels like really demotivating and stuff. So if you really want to help out the project, like make the decision and then like as you said, do your research, but also kind of like make the commitment.
Yeah,
um
yeah. It happens so often that people, and there's nothing really wrong with that, but many, many people, they just do a one-time contribution and that's it. That's exactly what I did in Bitcoin Core, for example. I did a contribution. I realized it wasn't my thing. I move on. But it takes time for maintainers and other contributors to help you out for your first contribution. So you should try as much as possible to minimize that and not just, waste in a sense other people's time. Because yeah, that's not cool.
exactly. Thank you so much, Daniela. This is an amazing presentation. You covered like pretty much everything there. I don't have too many questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having me, and see you soon. Bye.
yeah, I really like what you ended it with. Don't forget to have fun, everyone. Peace.
Yeah.